Hi everyone, we are here at the beautiful Aub and Bloom Bed and Breakfast in Leavenworth, Washington, where we will be filming today's episode of Revive Recipes. Today we will be showing you how to make everyday basic scones in a variety of ways. So come along with us and enjoy today's episode. Oh, and we'll give you a couple sneak peeks at the rooms inside. Come and join us. So here we are in our kitchen at Aub and Bloom Bed and Breakfast, and I am going to show you how to make basic scones. However, today we are actually making blueberry scones, and I'll explain as we go along. So to make our scones, our recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 large or extra large egg. Now if you use the extra large, keep in mind that this will replace some of the liquid that we'll be adding. 3/4 cup of heavy whipping cream. You want to use the heavy. And regular vanilla flavoring. That's what you put in your basic scones. But today, like I said, we're going to be making blueberry. So I will show you just the difference in what I'm doing. In fact, it's blueberry almond that we're making today. And it also calls for 6 tablespoons of butter. Now, I don't have my butter out here, and there's a reason for that. And I will tell you about that when we get to that step. So let's begin. We're going to start with our flour and add the salt, the baking powder. Now, the baking powder needs to be fresh. A lot of folks have baking powder sitting in their pantries and it's old. Well, baking powder needs to stay fresh. When you get baking powder and you open it up, be sure that you label a date on it as to when you opened it. So, okay, we have all our dry ingredients in here. I'm going to add the sugar and mix this up. Okay, now I'm just mixing it up and making a mess. When you measure your flour, scoop it up with your measuring cup in whatever container you have it in. Scoop it up and drop it. Scoop it up and drop it. By doing this, you're incorporating air into your flour before you measure. And then when you measure, you can scoop up that flour and just brush it off. You never want to pack it down and do that, because if you do that, if you pack it down, you'll get more flour and your recipe will not turn out accurately. So when I measured, I scooped it into the container a few times, just to incorporate the air, get it nice and light, and then just brush it off. It's super easy, it's quick, and it's faster than sifting. This flour I've got sitting here, that's for later when we're patting out our dough. Okay, so all of our dry ingredients have been incorporated into here. Now we're ready for the butter. And here's my tip. With our 6 tablespoons of butter, the very best thing you can do is shred it with a shredder. That's what you want to do. You want to put your butter back in the freezer after you shred it, because you want it to be very, very cold when you put it into your flour. This is not like making cookies. You don't want to incorporate your flour and get it, or your butter, and get it all blended in there. So let me grab my butter right in front of me. So this is all frozen. I froze it, I put it in a little bag, and You can do that ahead of time as early as you want to, but I have these really cold, hard chips now. See that? Hard, cold frozen butter. And I'm just gonna dump them in here. Get every last morsel. All right, now I'm gonna coat it all. I don't know if you can even hear it. It's kind of, well, it's hard. And I'm just covering it. I'm not pressing down with this here. I'm just stirring basically and getting everything coated with the flour. All right, so now to change this up, I am adding my blueberries so that they get coated with the flour. And at this point, you're going to want to work quickly because you want that butter to stay cold. So here we are just coating our blueberries. It's 3/4 cup. And if you can get those itty bitty little blueberries, the wild ones, they're perfect for this. I don't have them at this time. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do is I think almonds would be delicious with this, or lemons. If you wanted to zest a lemon and put the lemon zest at this point in here and skip the almonds, you could do that. I'm making blueberry almond scones. So I'm just gonna put a little handful of slivered almonds or sliced almonds in there. Again, I'm gonna give it a quick stir. Okay, now here's another quick little tip. While I mix up the liquid ingredients, we could actually set this in the refrigerator to keep it cold. You don't have to, but you can. So I've got my 3/4 cup of heavy duty whipping cream. And put my egg in there, 1 egg, large egg. And a little bit of my whipping cream. I'm gonna grab a spatula because I really want to get all that goodness out of this measuring cup into this. And then I'm gonna mix it up. A fork is much better. So I'm just gonna whip up that little egg in there. And then you're going to want to add a teaspoon of almond flavoring. Now, if you're making a basic scone, you're going to want to add just a vanilla flavoring. All right, so this is ready. Now we're going to pour it all in all at once. And then just going to start mixing. Remember, you want to keep all your ingredients as cold as possible. All right. Once we get to this point, we just need to start kind of pushing it together. It is going to be important that you don't overwork your dough. See how it looks really kind of shaggy here at this point? That's what you want, okay? Now I am going to put just a tiny bit of flour down. And then I'm going to just dump this out. See that? And then we're just shaping it. We're putting it together. We're pushing all the little pieces in. And I can see I have some little butter pieces down here that I don't want to miss. So I'll push those all back in. Can you see that the dough is starting to shape? You don't want to knead the dough. You just want to gently start pushing it together. Oh, escapee. Let's stick them in there. We want those blueberries. And then we're going to pat it down. We want a round disc is what we want. Now pat it down. I squished a couple blueberries, but that's okay. Now, we want this about 1.5 inches thick. You can make yours a little thicker if you want it. At this point, I'm done with the dough part of it. Now, there's a tiny bit of whipping cream still in this container. In this little measuring cup, and I'm just going to scoop it out on top. Let's sprinkle some of these. Spread them out a little. All right, and then, this is going to be so good, you guys. This is going to give your scones that little crispy, crunchy crust that we all love so much. All right, and then we're going to cut this. We want to cut them into 1/8. Now this is the very easiest way to get your wedges. Look at that. Aren't they pretty? All right. So then we're going to put them on a parchment paper. And I like to go every other direction. All right. Now, here's a little tip. At this point, we're going to put this in the freezer and let it sit in the freezer for 30 minutes or the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And then we're going to take it from the refrigerator, pop it directly into the oven at 400 degrees and bake for 15 to 20 minutes. Keep an eye on your ovens and watch and see when your scones start to get lightly golden and raised and they bounce back slightly when you touch them, then they're done. So we're going to put this in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. Okay, so we have our scones in the oven baking, and while they're baking, I'm going to go ahead and make the glaze, because even though we put the almonds over the top of our scones, we're going to also drizzle them with some glaze when they are cool. Now, last week when we made our dessert, I already had the glaze pre-made, so this time I'm going to show you how I made my glaze. So I have 1 cup of powdered sugar right here, and to that I am going to add very slowly, I've got 1/4 cup, just under 1/4 cup of milk. Now I'm going to add just a little bit, and here's why. Because everybody's humidity factors are different, and so we're going to start slowly and add more as we need to. And then because it's the blueberry almond scones, we're adding almond flavoring as well. This is the almond extract that I'm using. Okay, and then we're just going to stir this up. And you can see it's mixing. And if you do accidentally add too much milk, or you find that your glaze isn't the texture you want it a little thicker, you can certainly add more powdered sugar to it. And this looks like it's about perfect. You can see when I'm scooping it, we want to be able to drizzle this right over the top. So there's our glaze, and now we just have to wait for our scones to be ready. Okay, so we've taken our scones out of the oven and placed them on the cooling rack. And here's another little tip. You can either put the cooling rack back on your baking pan, your baking sheet, or like I did, I kept my parchment paper and I just slipped it underneath of my cooling rack so that when I put my glaze on, anything extra will go down onto my parchment paper, and it just makes cleanup so much easier. So these are just about ready to glaze. You can see they're nice and golden and they're nice and puffy. They're beautiful. But I just wanted to share with you for just a minute. We all know what's happening in the world today, and our hearts are breaking for the people in Ukraine and the people in Russia. We have friends in both countries, and we have been praying for both. But I wanted to remind you that God is still God. God is still on the throne. God is in the same place he was during the pandemic, during the times when our loved ones have been sick. God has always been in the midst of all of it, and he's there if we just reach out to him and seek him. We will find him. He promises that. And I just wanted to encourage all of you that it may seem like our world is falling apart, but God is still in control, and God is still on the throne, and he is still the one who manages and will rescue and save this broken world. And we just need to reach out and hold his hand through this. And I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, let's glaze our scones because I really can't wait to try one. So here we go. We're just going to drizzle it right like this. Look at that. Look at those blueberries. Yum. And you can see that the little sugar that we sprinkled on just gives it a pretty little shimmer. And yes, these are going to our guests. So they are in for a special treat. But of course, you know, we have to taste it to make sure that they're good enough for our guests, right? You're probably wondering, why on earth do I have these strawberries? Well, a true scone is served with jam and clotted cream. And I personally prefer fresh strawberries over jam. Now you can certainly get your own jam out and you can serve yours with jam. But I like fresh berries. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut this in half. Ooh, look at those flaky, tender. Look at that. And then I'm just going to put some strawberries on there. And then some clotted cream. Now, guys, I will post the recipe for this homemade clotted cream, which is same thing as Devonshire cream. It just depends on what part of England you're coming from. That's the only difference between clotted cream and Devonshire cream. Although those in England might differ with me and say, ours tastes better. Just depends on where you're from. All right, now we just have to take a taste. Oh yeah, get that berry. It's so good. You have to try and make this clotted cream at least one time. It only takes about 20 minutes cooking on your stovetop. There is a longer method of putting it in the oven overnight and letting it cool all day. You can skip all that. You can make it in 20 minutes cooking time, and then of course you have to put it in the refrigerator. But oh boy, once you make it, it is so good. It is whipping cream, you guys, and a little tiny bit of butter, and you just cook it and let it reduce, and it is so good. Anyway, I will post the recipe on the Revive Facebook page along with this recipe for the scones. Hope you all have a great day. Enjoy it, and we'll talk to you next time.